Hello again. Welcome to Home Studies e-learning for First. Today we're going to look at linkers. Now linkers, sometimes called linking words or discourse markers, are words that we use to connect ideas in our sentences. We use them in our speaking and writing. So let's begin. Now today we're going to look at linking words for contrast, purpose, reason and result. But let's start with contrast. Okay, these are the following words we use to show contrasting ideas. But is the most common and also the most informal way of showing contrast, and it's normally used to link two contrasting points within a sentence. We do use other words though. You'll recognize most of these. We can use although, though, even though, in spite of, despite with the fact that, whereas, however, and nevertheless. Let's look at some examples, shall we? Although she graduated with a first-class degree, she couldn't find a job. The football match continued in spite of the snow. They arrived at the airport on time. However, their flight was delayed by 2 hours. Okay, let's just spend a minute and look at these sentences in a bit more detail. The first one we use although. Although she graduated with a first-class degree, she couldn't find a job. Now, although, despite, and in spite of introduce the idea of contrast. So with these words, we usually have two halves of a sentence, separated by a comma. Although she graduated with a first-class degree, comma, she couldn't find a job. Similarly, look at the second one. The football match continued, comma, in spite of the snow. Now in the third example, we use however. Now however and nevertheless are normally used at the beginning of a sentence to connect it to the previous one. They're usually followed by a comma also. They arrived at the airport on time. However, their flight was delayed by 2 hours. Okay, now I'd like you to study these three images, and I'm going to give you about a minute. I want you to make up 3 sentences using contrast linkers. Okay, you may begin. Okay, time's up. Let's have a look, shall we? Here's some examples that I came up with. The Jones family enjoyed their holiday, but the weather wasn't very good. Even though Arthur won £1 million on the lottery, he didn't spend a penny. Despite the fact that Noah wrote to Santa Claus, he didn't receive a present from him. Oh dear, poor Noah. Okay, so in the first one I used but, the most common contrast linker. In the second one I've used even though. Now, even though is used to add more emphasis than although. We can also use though, but that's more common in informal speech. And in the third one, we've used despite the fact that. So after in spite of and despite, we need to use a gerund, a noun, and or the fact that plus a clause, as we've done here. Okay, now let's move on to linking words that we use for purpose. We use the following words to express the purpose of an action. Now to is the most common one that we use, but we also have in order to, so as to, so as not to, in order not to, in case, and so that. Here are some examples. Paul went on the internet to search for a suitable hotel. Now we could also say Paul went on the internet in order to search for a suitable hotel. Now, to, in order to, and so as to introduce the clause of purpose and all followed by the infinitive. So as to and in order to are more formal. Okay, now let's look at some images. Again, I've got 3 pictures here for you to study. And I'm going to give you a minute and I want you to come up with 3 sentences using linkers of purpose. You may begin. Okay, time's up. Let's have a look, shall we? So, here are some examples I came up with. Trevor stayed in on Friday night in order to study for an exam. Antonella took her passport with her to the bank in case she had to prove her identity. Tom took his mobile phone charger with him so as not to run out of battery power. Okay, so in the first one, we've used in order to show purpose. It's more formal. Now, in the second one, we used in case. Now, we use in case plus a clause when we do something in order to be ready for future situations or if there's a problem coming up that we need to avoid. And in the third one, we've used so as not to. We've used the negative there. Now, for negative purpose, we use in order not to or so as not to. Okay, now let's move on to linking words for reason. We use the following words to explain the reason why in sentences. By far the most common is, of course, because, but we also use as, since, because of, due to, and owing to. Let's look at some examples. I have stopped complaining to the electricity company since they never reply to my emails. Now let's have a look at that sentence again and use some different linkers. I have stopped complaining to the electricity company because they never reply to my emails. And the third one, as the electricity company never replied to my emails, I've stopped complaining. Now, because, as and since are more formal, and these are used to introduce clauses of reason. As is often used at the beginning of a sentence. And because of, due to, and owing to are also used to express the reason. And these are usually followed by a noun. Okay, over to you now. Now I've got just 2 images, 2 pictures this time, and I'm going to give you a minute and I'd like you to come up with 2 sentences and use linkers of reason. Okay, you may begin. Okay, time's up. Let's have a look, shall we? Okay, the cricket match was stopped for a short period due to a broken bat. My second one, owing to the rough sea conditions, the ferry service was cancelled. Okay, and remember, due to and owing to are more formal versions of because of. Okay, our last linker today will be linking words that we use for result. So we use the following to express the result of an action. The most common is of course so, but we also use as a result, therefore, and consequently. Okay, let's have a look at some examples. Okay, here are some examples that I made up. Jack was really hungry after finishing school, so he made himself a sandwich. Delicious. And another one, the school did not have enough students, therefore no new staff were being employed. So as I mentioned earlier, so is the most common way of introducing a clause of result. As a result, therefore, and consequently, these are more formal and are often used at the beginning of a sentence or clause. Okay, now I've got two more pictures for you to have a look at, and I'd like you to make up two sentences using linkers of result. Okay, same rules, you have a minute and you may begin now. Okay, let's have a look, shall we? Time's up. So, the first one I had was Lauren went to bed after midnight and slept through her alarm clock. As a result, she was late for work. Oh dear, naughty Lauren. The second one, the manager of the safe deposit company informed the customers that had been a robbery. Consequently, their valuables were missing. Now, as you can see there, as a result and consequently are a lot more formal. So use them for formal writing and speaking. Okay, that's the end of our review of linkers. If you want more practice, it's test time now, so over to you. Good luck.